just because we get to connect a lot before we even start this. But Cece, we're live. It is so good to meet
Hey,
you and have you on the Books for Guys podcast this week.
I'm thrilled to be here, Chris. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. You're so I'll be honest. I was reading a little bit about you, and just kind of learning about your background and story. And you're not just an author. You've done some cool things, and you've worked in a lot of cool places. And if you don't mind, just kind of share your background and some of the stuff you've been a part of, because I just think it's super interesting.
I don't mind at all. And it's funny, other people always see it's as interesting. And I am like, gosh, can you just stick to one thing? That's my own like inner critic running around in my head. But yeah, so I started off career wise, like aiming toward the State Department, which was just not going to happen because I talked with some people who actually worked in the State Department. They're like, no, don't do this.
Yeah.
So I ended up in business, in particular in middle market banking in Chicago in the early 90s. And that was like the heyday. We were doing crazy things and mergers and acquisitions, but I was like, I'm selling money. That makes no sense to me. And just said, you know what, I'm going to go to medical school. And I really wanted to open clinics in inner cities. Well, I've since I've done like all this like personality work, I've realized that on the Clifton Strengths model, I'm an arranger. I need big problems. Like, give me big problems. Like, you wanna solve peace in the Middle East? I can try to tackle that. Like, that seems like an okay thing for me to do
You'll
in
figure that out.
2026. But, just joking, don't actually say that to anyone
Yeah,
who
you might
has
get
any
some
power.
emails.
But anyway, so I the inner city morphed into post-Civil War situations, and after medical school and MPH, I, started a nonprofit, and my husband and I started doing work in Afghanistan. And then the Taliban took over, and wah, we had to pull out. And after that, we went to Colombia and worked in the mountains areas where the Civil War was the worst and where medical care was just not available. And we helped a local church start a clinic. We weren't there full time. You know, we always saw working with people who were there and part of the culture as being the primary way we would get stuff done. And then as they stabilized, we gotten connected to a church movement in Sierra Leone, and the story of the nation just broke my heart. 30 years civil war, you know, you watch the movie Blood Diamond. That's accurate. It's probably actually not as bad as it was. I don't know if it's a early 2000s movie. Um, and just wanted to see that nation turn around. We've started out work there. Maternal mortality and child mortality were the worst in the world. Um, Helped start 2 clinics there, and those clinics served over 600 villages. They would literally take the clinic and put it on the back of a bicycle, not a motorcycle, a bicycle. They eventually got motorcycles and pickup trucks as the roads improved, but, yeah, they were serving, where the district health service wasn't able to build up that fast. Our our little clinic with our little medicines acquired from Senegal and Togo, because that's the only place we could find medicine, would go out and they would vaccinate people and treat malaria and birth babies and refer people into the district health system. So it just became a great collaboration between not only the clinic and the district health system, but also the village chiefs who wanted to see their people well taken care of. And just all glory to God on that. But it was just an amazing experience. And I slept on floors and ate things I never thought I would and did things I never thought I would, like cross a land boundary in Africa, which I don't recommend anyone do, whether you're native or white,
Yeah.
and such and so forth. And then from there, was really just feeling like we were done in Sierra Leone, and we turned everything over to our local partner. And then I was kind of like, what's next? And God just kind of birthed in us a desire to plant a church in Cincinnati. My husband is from Cincinnati, and so that makes sense in a lot of ways. And we joined with an African American couple and planted a church here. Just celebrated our 12-year anniversary. I had to do the math in my head in September, and still going strong. I'm still a pastor there on staff, not full time, and used to be director of finance. I need to change that in all my bios and everything because I'm still on the exec ops team and I still do a lot of finance, but I'm transitioning out of the employment role to focus full time on writing. So that's
Yep.
kind of my backstory, and we can talk in a little bit about how I
Yeah.
started writing, but
Yeah, yeah. So
that's
you went from banking and finance to a medical career internationally for the most part, to planning a church, and now becoming a full-time author. Like, wow.
yeah, you see why I think I'm like, "Can you just settle on one thing?"
Yeah, but
Just
that's so
choose
much
one thing,
fun.
CC, that's it, just choose one
Yeah,
thing.
yeah. Yeah, where you're living life, doing impactful things, and just trying to I don't know, do awesome and cool things. How long were you working internationally, in your within your medical space?
Yeah. Yeah, so we started in 2002 while I was actually still in medical school.
Okay.
And then we turned over the nonprofit to another group of like local investors in 2012 when we were moving up here. So that
About
was a
10 years
10-year
then.
period, and my
Yeah.
kids were little. They were born in that time period. And so I had littles at home and elementary school. And then by the time, like, my oldest got to middle school, I was like, I probably need to slow down this international travel.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
just getting hard to coordinate all the things, Eh, I felt like in that season of time, I was a full-time chauffeur.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's incredible. I mean, I don't I again, I think that's such an impactful story, and I've been on a mission trip, not internationally,
Wow.
but, mine was 1 week, stateside. I can't imagine spending 10 years going back and forth to different countries. I know a lot of people who have, and it's impactful, and I've seen the stories and the impact that they have, and so I, uh, I support that, and I think that's super awesome. But so, okay, let's transition into
Yeah.
your writing now. What did you I don't know, how did you become interested in writing stories and authoring these books?
And I've always written stories, just never shared them publicly. So I people watch and I can't help but write their life story in my head, right? It's just ridiculous. And sometimes I test it out and I'm wildly wrong. But I've always written stories. And um, as I was going back and forth to Sierra Leone and seeing the impact of civil war on a nation and seeing the difference between Sierra Leone and Liberia, and this will make sense in a second. In Sierra Leone, I met a UN peacekeeper who said, the Sierra Leoneans have laid down not only the weapons in their hands, but the weapons in their hearts. And I think that's such a critical step when you're recovering from war, or even in any nation or culture, is that we not have weapons in our hearts. But then I went to Liberia and I realized, oh, these people have laid down their weapons in their hands, but they have definitely not laid down the weapons in their hearts. And that started me thinking on some things. And I'm a thinker in a lot of ways. I have to process a lot before I get to this point where I can speak or write. But in 2012, I had an all night dream, and I saw our nation uh, fight a civil war over racial issues. Now, for a little bit of context, I'm a pastor in a multi ethnic church, so this broke my heart to see our nation struggling in a way that I'd seen other nations struggle and be decimated by. And I woke up and I was terrified and crying and praying. Somehow I made it back to sleep and I fell back into the dream and met my four protagonists 45 years after the Civil War had taken place. And they were growing up in a nation and in a city that was divided by ethnic quadrants. And they never had met someone from another ethnicity, never interacted, didn't know, there were blank slates. And they just said, free us. And I woke up knowing I had to write their story, but not having really been a fiction writer throughout my career. I would describe myself more as a technical writer. I really an imaginer. I really had to, like, learn fiction, and not only that, but how do I write a series? I
Yeah.
mean, big projects.
Yeah, yeah,
Not Peace in the Middle East, but writing a series is not easy. So, like, had to then work on that, and that took a while, my writing craft and growing in that, but, finally released the first book last year, and but it's been up there even when in 2012, even when, everyone thought US was in a post-racial state. I just laughed at that. That's
yeah,
not even
yeah.
close.
Well, and we've seen since 2022, a lot of stuff get brought to the table, and it's clearly still a massive issue across our country. I mean, I'm sure working internationally too, you have a different just experience and perspective in general because you've seen more. We see it. I can watch a movie or a documentary and hear stories about things, but you've experienced it in real life, and you are experiencing it in real life, in your current role, and that's a unique perspective. And it also, I mean, it's funny because when you decided to write this book, you didn't just decide to write a book, you decided to write a series. So I can see where you go 200 miles an hour with anything that you're wanting to
Pretty
do.
much.
Yeah, which is not a bad thing. You're a mover and a shaker, and you get things done. You go out and accomplish what you wanna do, I can tell that. But talk a little bit about your book. So I've got them pulled up here, Caged, Divided, and Betrayed, and I know there's a 4th one in the series, but, yep, you've got them right there,
Yes,
yeah.
this is my baby. This is Marcos. He's the one that if I didn't write enough, he'd come in my dreams and be like, "Remember, I need to be free."
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh, Marcos. Anyway,
Tell my
um,
story.
so, Marcos is an 18-year-old teenager whose father is abusive, and he just wants to escape. He just wants to get out. And, Queenstown, where he lives, is, it's not you can't get out of Queenstown. It's not like you can just, walk out like we can here and just drive to the next city. So he gets out an impregnable, wall, and on the other side and sees the devastation of the abandoned city beyond, and he just realizes that, "Wow, I've made a mistake." And so he tries to come back in. Unfortunately, he gets caught, and he ends up in a labor camp. And Marcos is maybe a little bit like me in that he, just thinks no problem can't be solved, and so he said, "Well, I need to escape the labor camp, but it's not just gonna be me, it's gonna be everyone, so let's free the camp," as you do when you're an 18-year-old guy. So that's Divided. This is a story of Divided and how he meets other people who don't look like him, gets involved with the underground resistance movement called the Underground, and catapults the our heroes into the story of the series.
That I Yeah, it sounds amazing. I haven't read the series yet, but I was reading all the descriptions of them, and it sounds like they could be made into a movie. And I know
You're
there
not the
was
first person to say that. Netflix, if you want to call.
yeah. Well, and I saw some description of like, "Hey, if you like The Hunger Games, this is one that's could probably translate into something you'd be interested in too." And I love The Hunger Games, and that's my first thought when I was reading the summary of these books. I was like, "Ooh, this has a little bit of like a Hunger Games feel to it with the districts and the different cities kinda siloed." Uh, but then my immediate thought, I was like, "Hey, Cece may be onto a show here, we could get this thing produced."
I'd love it.
Yeah. So you're obviously so intertwined right now in these with these characters and telling their story and getting this moved along. And is the 4th book going to be the end of this series? Okay.
Yes. So, I mean, my brain can't help doing some spinoffs, but I've got Divided, Caged, which are already out. Betrayed is coming out in 2026, as is United, and that is book 4. Betrayed and United are just got through with their developmental edit. Readers know about that. It's a big edit, big picture edits, and so I've got a lot of big picture fixing to do. So that's my December and January, and then I'll be opening my advanced reader team if anyone wants to join that, likes to read books and review books, um, in February for both of those books.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that will conclude the series. We'll put a bow on that. I have a standalone young adult dystopian romance between two of the side characters that's
Okay.
happening sort of in the background of Betrayed and United. And then there's a prequel duology that's been bouncing around in my brain. But I also have all of the novellas. So I have an entire companion series of novellas. So Upheaval is what we start off with, and that is the post-apocalyptic prequel. It's set in modern day with characters that we will see later on again. And then Deception is sort of like a D&D side quest for a secondary character, Rose's mom, Sophie. She goes to the underground resistance movement's headquarters and some shenanigans happen. So that's kind of fun and interesting. And then I'm working on Junior's villain origin story. And that's not going to mean anything to anybody, but he is the big bad. And I
Okay.
love a villain origin story, and he's really got a deep and complex one. Then there's a behind the scenes surrounding out with four Carrie, her story as a spy for the underground.
Yeah.
So it's just a lot of fun.
Yeah. Well, that was kind of my next question was, are you working on additional projects? Do you have other series in mind that's kind of coming around? Do you, your process now that I mean, you're an author, you're a writer, you're
Yeah.
enjoying this, you're creating stories. I'm always curious because everyone says the same thing. The brain's always going. There's always stuff pumping through. How many projects can you really manage? But in reality, like, yeah, do you have a couple projects you're working on for when this series is done? It sounds like you do.
Yeah, so up until the point when I was still working for most of my week, I really couldn't manage any more than one. I needed to just focus. But now, as Divided is coming to a conclusion, I I actually think I could do two very different things, and I can't just stay to one genre. I would definitely consider myself a genre hopper. Wondering if I go too far afield, if I'll need to launch a new pen name. But there's an idea that's kind of rumbling around in my brain that is so dramatically different from young adult dystopian that I don't even want to discuss it. But it has the same themes of racial reconciliation. So I think that's the uniting banner for both of them. I don't know. I wanna get started on it, and it may be that I work on the Divided series in the morning once I'm done with Betrayed and United. I just need to get
Yeah.
those done.
Yeah.
So February, March-ish, start in the morning focusing on dystopian writing, and then the afternoon, my playtime is what I'll call it. Because it does this other project feels like play, and it will probably still feel like play until I have to crank out the last book.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then it'll just be like, "You just have to focus, get on with it."
Yeah. Well, and that you're transitioning my questions
Mhm.
perfectly, by the way. Because my next question was just your process of writing. Family responsibilities. Are you a person that has a structured daily schedule where you're like, "Hey, this is my job. I write from these hours." Is it a little more sporadic? How do you go about planning? Because I always ask people too, I'm like, "Hey, now that you've written these books and you enjoy it obviously, but is there an aspect to it that almost feels more of just a responsibility to get your writings out there to where it's, again, now that you have some deadlines you've had set and you've got another story you've committed to putting out there. So I'm sure there's a little bit of that, like, hey, I've got to do this. And sometimes maybe it doesn't feel as just pure joyous as maybe it did before. But I'm always curious, just kind of your structure to how you organize your day and how you get these stories written.
So I write 5 days a week. I'm not one of those who writes every single day. I need some space, and I need, time to refill that creative well, and that really comes evenings and a big chunk on Saturdays and Sundays. Plus, there's other things, family and church responsibilities. Um, but my work days are generally speaking like 9 to about 5, maybe 4, depending on energy, and the first thing I do is, when I don't have something scheduled in the mornings, get into a a a a manuscript block time, and that's really my highest creativity time. I'm either writing or I'm revising, I'm refining, I'm proofreading, something like that. And then I do other things after that, maybe hour and a half or 2-hour period. Maybe it's a business task, maybe it's working on a blurb, or maybe it's posting on social media, whatever, and then lunch and workout, and then another manuscript block time in the afternoon. And at the end of that, I put my most draining tasks. So the thing that is like the existential dread of my life,
Yeah.
I put at the end of my day. And then I let that just run out the creative well, and then we refill it overnight.
Yeah.
So that's just kind of my routine.
Yeah. It's interesting. I know a lot of people, they kinda take the opposite approach and they knock out, like, the hardest thing early. You let it simmer and you're like, "You know, I'm gonna let this end my day to where it's, then I'm cut off for the night and I'll start again tomorrow." Um, what, couple more questions for you, CC. Obviously, you're a person of impact. You wanna create change, you wanna have an impact on the world. What is the I guess, what is your mission and goal with your writing, and what do you hope people take away from it when they read your stories? What's the message you wanna put out there?
Yeah. My message is to get uncomfortable and be okay with being uncomfortable in cross cultural communication, relationships, whatever it may be. Um, Because what I see right now is people are congregating in silos and they're yelling across this void at each other, and it does nothing. It actually makes the situation worse. It doesn't do nothing, it makes it worse. What I would really love to see is instead of that kind of shouting at each other, we gather around a table, we share a meal, and we have a discussion. And we, yes, agree to disagree, but not become disagreeable in the disagreement, if that makes any sense. That's really my hope and passion. And obviously, my characters are having to work through those cross cultural barriers in their own lives, yet they don't have the baggage we have. And, but the society was built on our baggage. So there's a lot they have to overcome in crossing those walls. I feel like it's easier for us because we don't have the physical walls
Yeah,
in a
but they're
way,
there.
but it's harder because we have the baggage.
Yeah, yeah. No, I love that. I love the challenging yourself to get uncomfortable and have conversations, and yours is very multicultural focused. I always laugh when because I don't really talk politics, but I'm like, if you took 3 Democrats, 3 Republicans, put them in a small room together in small groups, give them food and say, "You're not leaving till y'all compromise on what this is," I'm like, there'd probably be a lot more that gets done if you just had to sit down in small groups and talk to people and get things hashed out. Because I truly personally think that we're all more alike than we're unalike, and I think we
Yes.
all probably agree on things more than we disagree, but we just don't talk it out enough to get to that point. So I love that that's your message because I agree. I'm like, people just talk to with each other. There's so much more that we can come together on and be happier about and kind of diminish some of this tension that seems to come up in a lot of different areas of society. So I
Yeah.
love that that's your message. That's
Yeah,
really
and I love what you've done in that scenario is that you've raised the stakes by sticking them all in a room and telling them they can't come out.
yeah.
Like, I get
Here's a
that, like, give
pizza.
it a deadline, like, challenge yourself to do something that is uncomfortable by a date. Like, say, "Okay, I'm going to fill in the blank by fill in the blank." Like, if you do that, you'll get it done.
Yep, I love that. Yeah, if somehow we could force that and make that possible,
Yeah,
that'd be great. But, Cece, one more question for you, and, as everybody knows, I ask everyone this question at the end of every conversation, but, obviously, you're a reader. What's a book or 2 that has had a personal or professional impact on your life? And if someone were to ask you, "Hey, Cece, I need a good book recommendation," what would you
yeah.
recommend to them?
Absolutely. So I really love K.A. Riley's The Cure series. It deals with class differences, but she kind of hits some of the same themes I do in that there's a crossing of a wall and there's secrets that are found out. So I love that series for that aspect of it. And then my latest read is the last in this series called Forgive Me, Father. And it is a post apocalyptic cult that is chilling. Actually,
Mm,
sets up then a dystopian society, and a young lady falls into a creek and ends up on the other side. I see a theme here, and it's by my author friend Caitlin Mazer, and the fourth in that series just came out, so it's a complete series. But check out that series.
Awesome. Cool. Yeah, I'm always interested. There's so many good books out there, and, like, I just keep adding to my list, and I'm like, How am I gonna read all these books?"
I know it's impossible. My to be read list is, like, as long as my arm and 4
Yeah.
legs, you know, to put together.
There's yeah, there's so many good books, and I just yeah, I'm gonna add those to my list because I find those are I'm interested in your books and those stories. You seem to have a theme of what you're interested in, which I'm the same way. I these all of these are very intriguing to me, so I'm sure that I will enjoy them, and I'm sure a lot of people will. And so, CC, this has been a pleasure. This has been awesome. It's so cool to learn about your story and just kind of how you've gotten to where you're at now, and just what you're working to accomplish. And so, can't wait to see all of your books come out. I'm sure there'll be a lot more as you continue to write. And so we'll have to have you on another episode when we get more books out. We can talk about them.
This has been a pleasure, Chris.